wasn't gonna find out. Parts that we run from.
You haven't been honest with me about anything! It's not
Parts that we're afraid to look at.
You are coming completely unraveled.
I am completely raveled.
Everybody's going to be held accountable for their actions.
I know about your little secret. Are you threatening me?
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Watch Squad. This week, as you heard in the intro, we're talking about a miniseries that was on Hulu that was just so deep and so crazy, and what we're talking about is Little Fires Everywhere. This is going to be crazy. Joining me, as always, is my fellow Watch Squad compatriot, Mr. Joe D. Welcome, my brother. What is up? How are you?
All right, man. How's it been?
Oh, wow. This one was a deep one, bro. This one almost broke the brain.
Dude, you recommended this to me, and I looked at, I don't know, I didn't watch the trailer, but I just, did image searches or just searched the internet for it. I'm like, this is gonna fucking suck.
I fell into it. I was with my lady sitting on a couch, and she's like, I want to watch something new. And she's like, oh, what's this? And we're on Hulu because, once you watch Netflix long enough, you're just looking for something instead of seeing the same shit you see all the time. And I'm not calling it shit, but instead of watching the same things or not watching whatever the case may be, we flipped over to Hulu, and she's like, oh, let's check this out. And we're sitting there, and on a Sunday, we literally, I think 7 of the 8 episodes had dropped when we fell into this. And in one day, we literally binge watched I think it was a Sunday. We watched the first 7 episodes, and we walked away from it, and we're like, what?
Dude, that's 7 hours in one day.
Don't quote me. It could have been 2 days. Look, man, we're in the world we live in now. It very well could have been a day. It very well could have been over the course of 2 days.
I can't really fault you. It only took me 2 days to watch it, too.
You sit down 4 hours one day, 4 hours the other day. I sit in front of a computer and work for 10 hours a day. I can watch a lot of things. I watched another Hulu show, which maybe I might have you go and watch, and we can review, over the course of 3 days. And it was 2 seasons of 13 episodes a season. That's how much content I'm consuming. But Little Fires Everywhere. This is based on a 2017 novel by the same name. It was penned by Celeste Wren. It premiered on Hulu March 18th. As I mentioned, 8 episodes. It stars Reese Witherspoon and Kerry Washington. Yeah, 2 amazing women when it came to acting in this miniseries. And they also executive produced it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So they kind of had the dual role going on there. But, there was a ton of other, if you want to call them executive producers or producers. You had Liz Tigalier, Lauren Neustadter, Pilar Savone.
The list goes on.
It was a very large production that they, I don't necessarily know how easy or hard it is to adapt a novel to a movie. You watch the Harry Potters, and if you're a Harry Potter fan, and you're like, but you didn't talk about this part of the book.
Yeah.
So
well, it's kind of
I didn't read the novel, so I have nothing to compare it to. I only can tell you what I watched with my eyeballs. So that's what we're going to review today.
Yeah.
All right.
It's, as far as novels to movies go, with side plots being left out, like you mentioned, the Harry Potter stuff, there's a lot going on in this show. A lot. It's a lot.
They packed a lot of information into this 8-hour miniseries. Okay, let's get into this. Set in Shaker Heights, Ohio, during the late 90s, which was a very interesting juxtaposition for me because in the late 90s, I had just graduated college and I was kind of living my best life at that point in time, kind of working whatever I could work and didn't really quite figure out what my life plan was. So I can kind of relate to this to some degree. They were much younger than me. I didn't have kids at that point, so on and so forth. This show just starts off like a bullet.
Yeah. I don't remember exactly how it starts. Like I said, there's a lot of stuff in this, but it centers around two different families. Yes. One larger family of
Richardsons.
The Richardsons, 4 children, and a husband and wife. Standard. You're all American.
Nuclear family.
Yeah. And then you have the
Warrens.
The Warrens, who are not as well off as the Richardsons, and it's just a mother and a daughter. That's it.
Yeah,
and
single mom raising a daughter, moving into Shaker Heights.
Go ahead. I was just going to say, it's about them two families like coming together and what happens between them. I mean, that's on an overall high.
Yeah,
I don't know. Like I said, this is going to be hard.
You also can't discount the McCulloughs, and you can't discount what was it, BB Chew.
Yeah.
They were kind of like, they might not have been like main characters, but their storyline and their plot and everything all fed into what was going on within these families.
That's what I mean. There's a lot going on here. A lot.
And I mean, we usually break everything down by like plot and storyline and give it a grade. And this is a very difficult one to just say, hey, the overall plot and storyline was amazing. Mm-hmm. I think the overall plot and storyline told a great story, but it was so good because of all of the pieces that went in to create this storyline. And
how they intersect.
And unfurl the plot as the plot went along. Like, the whole entire thing, like, you're sitting here going, oh, that one burned everything down. And then all of a sudden you get to the end of the show and you're like, it wasn't even her at all.
And it's crazy you bring that up, because the ending of the book apparently is different than the movie. I don't know what the difference is. Like you, I did not read the book. But now that made me curious to go and find out. I haven't done that yet, but I will.
I might actually pick up the book and read it just for the sake of it, just to see how
different it is.
Different it actually is, yeah. And you're always going to have those liberties. But one of the crazy things is the writer of the novel had say in how this show was produced and directed and so on and so forth. Like, she was there. She's actually in one of the episodes.
Oh, nice.
Remember the Asian woman sitting on the couch when they're doing the book club talking about the vagina monologues?
Yes.
And she's very uncomfortable?
Yes. That
was the author.
Okay.
So, yeah, it's pretty cool. All right, so just to get into, like, some of these storylines. So you had several. You had Elena's storyline, up and coming, gonna be in New York Times, writer, and ends up leaving Europe and her boyfriend and this whole 9 yards to go back home, and falls into mommy's money and takes a job at the local paper and creates this family.
With her rich lawyer husband played by Josh. Her rich lawyer husband,
right. So you have her storyline where she just can't help but fucking meddle in everybody's lives and create this persona of like the perfect children, except for Izzy, who she's like, you let her find out, she's like, I don't even fucking want you.
Yeah.
And she's fucked up in her own way. Like, the whole Christmas photo where she's cutting her child out of the photo. Yeah. I mean, like, what is wrong with you on so many different levels, and breaking into patient records and everything else? It's just insane. Like, her whole Reese Witherspoon knocked that role out of the park.
And her character doesn't believe she's doing anything wrong. She thinks she's helping.
She's a sociopath.
It's crazy.
Like, she is a complete sociopath, without a doubt.
And to the point where she even tries to make her firstborn daughter, not the firstborn in the family, but her firstborn daughter, tries to make her in a spitting image of her.
Yeah.
It's the children in this movie start out as like this picture perfect, except for the youngest Izzy, and you learn that their storylines are just as screwed up as their mothers.
You brought it up.
So crazy.
You brought it up. Lexi,
Yes.
the eldest daughter,
Yep.
played by Jade Pettyjohn.
Uh-huh.
So she's this like super popular, high school girl who's going to Yale, but as her plot unfolds, it's like, she stole something from someone to write an essay because she's had such a perfect life. And in reality, if she wrote about how hard it was to live under her mother's thumb, that probably would have been just as resonating as opposed to taking Pearl's story and applying it to herself for her essay, and then she goes in and gets knocked up by her star quarterback boyfriend, and then has to go and get an abortion, and doesn't even take it upon herself because her mom will kill her, and uses Pearl's name on the paper and forges all that, and then eventually ends up melting down and turns on the family like insane. And then you have Moody, the younger son, who he's got his own little sociopathic tendencies because Pearl's not paying attention to him. No one else should have her. And he starts going into this whole like depressive state, and like the psychology in this show is insane. It is just crazy. I think the most normal person in this entire family is Trip, who really, being a teenage boy and going after the girl, he was a bottom feeder up until he met Pearl, always going after the low-hanging fruit, typical boy his age, who doesn't have the greatest self-esteem or is beat down by his parents because he isn't fitting a mold or whatever. And then Bill, the lawyer. He's like the most sane person in this entire family.
I think that's who I was going to choose as the most sanest person. He just tries to live his normal life until, his wife meddles in his own stuff. And then he's got to deal with her.
And then he finds out about her and going out and seeing her ex-boyfriend and $300 bottles of champagne and hotel rooms. And yeah, poor guy.
And that's only the Richardsons.
That's just the Richardsons. And there's way more to these plot and these storylines. Like, we're just really, like, tipping on this. There's so much.
You didn't even talk about Izzy's storyline, and hers, to me, is one of the best.
I wanted to take Izzy and put her kind of on an island of her own and talk about Mia and Pearl, because Izzy kind of fits in the middle of these two families because she doesn't really feel like she belongs in her own, and she relates more to Mia. And Mia struggles in life and so on and so forth, being the artist and that camaraderie and all of that. So I think there's way more to Izzy than there is just to like lump her in with the other kids. Okay. Let's talk about Mia, Kerry Washington's role, Mia Warren, who we find out is not her real name. Warren was her brother's name. Goes to art school in New York to the dismay of her parents. Finds out her parents can't pay the scholarship or she loses money, and she doesn't have money to pay for school, so she's approached by a dapper young guy on a train who offers to make her a surrogate mom and pay her $10,000.
That's a little creepy to me, and does that really happen? Like, that's the one unbelievable
I don't know if it
thing.
happens like that. I'm sure it's happened in the world. I'm sure there's some woman who watched this and went, that was me.
That's crazy. How do you just walk up to somebody on a train and go, "Hey, you want to father my child?"
Well, no, you look like my wife, who can't have kids. Do you want to be the surrogate?
Yeah,
that's just what?
It's bonkers.
And her whole story of like everything going on, that she could have been wealthy all along, and wealthy, is a relative term.
Yep.
She didn't have to live the life of the pauper the way she did, and
we
learned that the whole reason why she was bouncing around and not spending much time in one place to the other is because she lived in fear her entire life of finding out that she could get caught and did something wrong. Basically kidnapped a child for its whole life. Um, I liked her story. It was very powerful. Being an artist myself, it did speak to me and the trials and the tribulations and everything that one goes through just to make a name for yourself and succeed in the field. It's so hard, and there are those so many more pits than there are upswings, and it's basically like living hand to mouth and so on and so forth. So Mia's story really spoke to me. The the compassionate side of wanting to help another mother who gave up her child was that to me spoke like huge volumes. And I'm referring to the whole BB Chow and trying to help her get her child back and so on and so forth. What about you? How'd you feel about Mia's storyline? And
They kept her storyline earlier in the series a bit of a secret. Like, they lead you to believe that she's down on her luck, doesn't have any money, and just hopping from place to place with her child, whatever they can afford, and go where they needed to go, with the excuse that she leaves to find her next inspiration for her art. That's the way I took it in the beginning, until everything comes crashing down for them, too.
Yep.
And like I said, it gets deep, man. I mean, now you have her fighting with BB Chow to get BB's daughter back from the Richardsons, Elena Richardson's like best friend who adopted this child essentially. It's crazy, and I don't know how deep we want to get into that part at the minute since we're still talking about Mia, but her whole life with being disowned by her parents because she did have Pearl out of wedlock, and it wasn't even supposed to, she was supposed to give it up to the surrogate family. I don't know how that works or what the term is, but she ends up keeping her and, like you said, kidnapping her, so she's always on the run. And it's crazy. I mean, at any point in time, she could have had more money than she led to believe.
And all she needed to do was sell a piece of artwork, which ends up not even being the piece of artwork that everyone thinks is the piece of artwork. Everyone's like the one above the mantle.
Yep.
But it wasn't even that piece of artwork. It was the one of her pregnant in the bathtub that was a $500,000 photograph.
Because of who took the photograph, I think is more of the reason.
It was who took the photograph. Yeah. Her ex-girlfriend, who you find out, as the story portrays. And this is where, like, the Izzy bisection, so to speak, comes into this, because Izzy is, a lesbian. She's a young girl, lesbian, who is turned away from her girlfriend because they get caught in whatever the game they were playing, 5 minutes of...
7 minutes in heaven.
7 minutes in heaven. Yeah. Speak from experience there, Joe.
Oh, well. I mean, I was in high school once.
So 7 minutes in heaven, they get popped, and all of a sudden she turns on her, so on and so forth. And there's more to that story as well. But, the two people to me in this entire storyline that had the strongest, like, plot twists and so forth for them were Pearl. Okay. A girl who was living with her mom, never, as they said, only ever had one painted wall in a room, never had 4 painted walls, and always wanted to be like Lexi, have it all, have the money, have the pretty clothes, the dresses, to have the affluence, not to be poor.
She wanted to have what she couldn't, essentially.
Yeah.
And saw that as a better life for herself, better than the one she had.
Whereas Izzy has this whole kind of awakening when it comes to, art and, going through all of these really crazy statements that she was making, like selling the Cabbage Patch Kids. Uh-huh. The white one was so expensive, and then you get the little colored baby who is free. Like, all of these statements she's making. Like, there was such a racial undertone in this show, and I don't mean it like in a necessarily bad way, but
But they call it out. They
call it out like
too.
Big time.
Mm-hmm.
Like when they had Linda on the stand, and she was being cross-examined, and he was like going at her, "Oh, what? Because it's a Chinese baby? You didn't want a Chinese baby. You're trying to so you did fortune cookies." Which we all knew leading up to that was Elena, who took it upon herself to do fortune cookies, so on and so forth. You know, they very much twisted and turned like race throughout this entire plot and storyline. And I think they did it in a tasteful way. I don't necessarily think they did anything that was untasteful or is going to turn anyone against them, just from a story aspect. All right. Do you have anything else you want to add about this plot or story?
I mean, you talked about Linda. She's Linda McCullough. She's the one who adopted the little Chinese baby and best friends with Elena, just to clarify there. But I think that's pretty much a lot of the main plots that they hit in this, or plots they hit in this, or stories they hit in this series. So no, I don't have anything extra to add.
Yeah, they don't even call out who the baby was, and I can't even get her. Can't even remember what her name was.
Maribel or
Maribel was
Mei Chen, I think.
Mei Chen, that's it. All right, score it.
I give it an 8. I mean, the story kept me very interested. Like I said, I watched it over 2 days, did 8 hours. I did not think I was going to enjoy this on the story level at all, and so it surprised the shit out of me.
Yeah, I mean, it for a made for Hulu show, like Hulu pulling a Netflix and saying we're going to use our own studios and make this. I think it was dynamite. I gave it an 8.5.
Okay.
Moving on to writing and characters.
There's plenty
based
of
on
them.
a book. Lots of interesting twists and turns, and only giving you certain parts of the story and then unfurling a little bit more and then unfurling a little bit more. Being a miniseries, you have that luxury to take your time unfurling all these different plots and stories.
And give you those gotcha moments. Yeah.
Right.
And this is filled with them.
I think the writing was spectacular. I think they did a great job. I do have, the way they ended it, there's certain things that kind of feel not completely buttoned up. Like, we all both sat on the couch looking at each other going, well, what happened to Izzy? Like, what's the rest of Izzy's story? Like,
so I do have a question about that, since you brought it up, because it was something I was going to ask you afterwards. So at the end of the show...
You don't see her in the car, but she's in the car, but then she's not in the car, then she's in the car, but she's not in the car. Like, I don't know if that's an editing faux pas, like they just didn't have the takes for that.
I was wondering if she imagined that car passing her. You know what I mean? Like, did that actually pass her?
That's interesting.
Was it a different car that she actually got into? But it's what she saw. I don't know. I mean, because like you, I'm confused with her story, and her story's the hardest one for me to, like you said, to be buttoned up. Like, I don't know. I don't know what happened there. So, but yeah, you can continue. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. That's one of the things, like, character-wise, I think every single one of these characters acted their role. They told their role. You had an emotion for every single character, whether it was anger or, sadness or joy, elation,
dislike, yeah.
All of those, every character brought some emotion out, which means to me, like, every single one of them was acted well. And, when you hated a character, like, I hated Elena, like, pretty much the entire series. Like, I hate this bitch. This bitch, like, she needs to burn. Pun intended.
Yeah.
And yeah, I gave the writing and characters a 9. Like, that's how impactful I think they were with telling and portraying their specific roles.
I'm right there with you. I gave it a 9. I thought every character, and there was each of their storylines. Like, I've watched shows before where like they break to this character and we're watching their storyline or plot. Like Beverly Hills 90210 back in the day. You got like Brandon's and Jennifer McCarthy, whatever her damn name is. I don't even remember the names on that show. Or Luke Perry, his character, and like Shannon Doherty's character, they have their own plot, and it's like, I don't care about this plot. Like, I don't care. Let's go back to those other two or whatever.
Right.
This show, every single character's plot and storyline and everything else, and the way they acted them, there was no bad like thing that I'm like, I can walk out and go to the bathroom during this. Like, there was nothing with that, and these guys, and I think it's because they all did their jobs so damn well, and the writing was so on point. The writing with how these children act for the grades and ages they were perfectly match in like if they told me this person was 16, they acted like a 16-year-old would act when I was at that age in the 90s. So all done very well. I give it a 9. Yeah. But which character to you was your favorite? Because that is something I want to ask you. And
I really enjoyed Mia's character. She spoke to me. I enjoyed Izzy's character.
She's my favorite.
The rebellious, I think why Izzy spoke to me so much was she knew she wasn't wanted. Uh-huh. She was just waiting to hear it. She was so ahead of everybody else. And they even say, maybe Izzy had it right all along. Uh-huh.
Like she saw through all the bullshit.
Yeah, she refused to conform. She stayed true to being who she was, not what her mother wanted her to be.
And that's the one thing Bill had in this that kind of pissed me off, is when he tells her after he finds out about Elena and her stint in New York and everything, he looks at Izzy and says, just do what you're told, just conform pretty much.
Yeah, total lie.
And now, like, this was the one guy, like, her father was the one person she trusted up to a point, and now he just let her down too. Yeah. And it's like, man.
Yeah, I would have to say Izzy and Mia, they're the two that kind of stand out to me, even, after to digest it all. Those two really stood out to me.
But yeah, I'd love to see I'd love to know more. That's why maybe picking up the book ain't a bad idea. Maybe you do find out what happens to Izzy.
Yeah, right. All right, moving right along. Effects and post-production. This one's kind of tough in some regards because there weren't a ton of special effects. I mean, there were, fire, flame, burning of the house, like pyrotechnics, like that was there. What really got me, and I'm lumping this into the effects aspect of it, is they nailed the late 90s. Yes. Down to the vehicles, down to
the pager that
even finding but think about, like, the car that Mia was driving was the same car her brother had 2 decades earlier. Yeah. And to be able to find that model and make of car then, and to find a model and make of car now, maybe it's the same car just wrapped, who knows? That was really, really well done. Like, to really nail that late 90s feel and culture and dress and
even from
hairstyles and
the fashion. Yeah, they talk about the tartan kids, which plays a big part to Izzy's storyline at one point, and the way they dressed and yeah, it's they nailed the time frame perfectly. I'll give you that.
Yeah. So with all that said, I ended up giving it an 8, just because of how well they nailed, the period. Directing. I mean, I don't know if I can say anything bad about this directing. I mean, the job was done. I mean, the story was solid. The actors, like, the emotions and all that. I mean, directors have what they see, and they...
Any problems with camera angles or anything like that in the direction he went with those?
And they don't even really... I mean, they don't list the director. At all.
It might be different episodes had different directors.
So you had Lynn Shelton did the initial episode. You had a few episodes, Michael Weaver, Lynn Shelton again. Nzinga Stewart did too as well. Lynn Shelton was the primary director. She did a majority. She also directed the finale. I give them all top-notch scores. I ended up giving directing a 9, just as
I did an 8.
It was that good to me. I mean, you kept the continuity together. You kept it all solid. So, any parting words? Anything you want to say?
As far as the show goes, if you got time and to watch it, it was definitely an enjoyable watch. Not something that's really in my wheelhouse. Not something I would go out of my way to see. It was very surprising. And I think it has more to do with how well the acting is done. Kerry Washington is an amazing actress. Reese Witherspoon, who, I don't know, I haven't seen her much lately, knocks it out of the park here. Just very surprising. I can't believe I watched as much as I did in like the 2 days it took to watch this. Or 3 days, I think. I think I left the last episode for a third day.
But at the same time, you're not sitting here going, I can't believe I just spent 3 days watching this. You're just like, oh my God, that was so good.
I'm also glad I did not have to wait for each episode to drop. So
only one we ended up having to wait for was the finale.
Yeah. Which is the longest episode at like an hour and 20 minutes long. So that's why I waited till a third day to watch it.
Yeah, and it was well worth it. I mean, it was totally well worth it. All right. I agree with Joe. It was not my wheelhouse. As I said, I fell into it, and I am not disappointed I fell into it. It is a pure drama. It is a true drama. And it's very dramatic. And if you like psychological type stuff, this is one that you can definitely go and watch. It's not a psycho thriller or anything like that, but there is a lot of psychology in this that'll really twist your screws in certain ways. I guess that's it. This is another episode. Wow, that wasn't as hard as we thought it was.
No, but you also didn't give your overall score.
Oh, overall. Well, my overall score works out to be an 8.625 if you want to be exact, or in Watch Squad scores an 86%.
Yeah, I'm not going all the way down to the 1,000th here, but I believe mine comes out to an 8.3. It's very close to, it's about an 8.3, 8.2 something, if we're going to go down to hundreds and thousands.
So we'll call it an 83.
Sure.
Yeah, again, people go watch it. Take the time out of your day. It's something definitely worth to go binge watch. They're all up there now. Enjoy it. It's well done. Seriously.
There's something you'll connect with.
Yeah, at some point in time, it'll resonate with you in some way, shape, or form. All right, with that being said, this has been another episode of Watch Squad. We are out of here. Late.